Welcome back. In this demonstration, we're going to review how to make a letter base for our quilling assignment. So in class, we talked a lot about quilling, and you worked on some of the quilling shapes. We talked about open forms and closed forms and how you're going to use those to create your letter in quilling. But before we actually start laying out the letter, I just want to remind us of some of the other things that we talked about in class. All right. In our packet, you chose some kind of script, whether you wanted it to be some kind of Old English letter, probably the first letter of your name, or if you wanted to choose something from one of the other cultures we looked at, you can use this in class, or if you're at home, you can go through and search for pictures on the internet and find something that kind of really speaks to your design thought, okay? Something that you're interested in, so that the project is interesting for you. Now, on mine, I'm going to choose the letter L right here off this Old English font chart. So just keep that in your mind, and we'll come back to that as we talk more. At home, you can just take a regular sheet of paper. This is a normal 60-pound paper from school, and we are going to be using a piece of tag board in school, but I want you to practice on just a regular sheet of paper first. You can use computer paper, that'll be good enough as well. But before we go on to that, I want to talk about the expectations for what I expect to see when you come to class. One thing, I want you to think about line, and think about how the flowing of the line can be directional. So like, you know, if you're thinking of this A, how do these little lines here flow up and pull your eye around? Or how does the curviness of this crossbar here curve down and really direct your eye in a direction? And it should be flowing. You don't want your letters to be blocky or stop the viewer that's looking at it. Likewise, we really have to think about shape. We want to make sure that it's even and consistent. So when you're making the shapes of your letters, you want to have basically like bubble letters or block letters so that you can fill them in later with the little quilling shapes. So it's really essential you have a large shape for your letters so that you can fill things in later with those cool quilling shapes that we learned in class today. So be concentrating on shape. All right. Then one of the principles of art, I want you to think about balance. How are you going to design your letter? Do you want it to be symmetrical, or do you want it to be asymmetrical? So here's the letter A. Obviously, it's symmetrical because it's even and the same on both sides, dividing it right down the center. This one, it's still a letter A. People are going to notice that as a letter A, but it looks different. How can you design your letters so that either they are symmetrical or asymmetrical? So please think about balance as you're drawing out your letter. And then thinking in the future about repetition. All right, so repetition is repeating an idea, in this sense a shape or a form, without making a pattern. So you'll see that like here we've repeated this kind of like open C kind of quilling form and repeated it a couple times, but we didn't make a pattern necessarily. So as you're designing your shape, think about what kind of patterns or what kind of repetition you're going to be using inside of your letter, and that will kind of help guide you in making good decisions. And likewise, variety. We're going to have a variety of color. You're going to have the choice between, you know, whether you're doing monochromatic or complementary, or what kind of color choices you're doing, as well as what kind of shapes you're going to be using for your quilling. So you're going to have a lot of variety, and you want to make sure that you're making a good choice about what kind of variety you have. So those things are going to be the guiding principles of how you start to lay this out. Now, you can have your page vertical, or you can have it horizontal, depending on which way you think is going to fit your letter the best. I'm going to start with mine being vertical like this, because I'm going to do a capital L, and I think that's just going to work better for what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to ask you to put a little border on. Your border should be, I'd say, about an inch wide. So if you want to measure it, you can. I'm just going to eyeball it and hold my ruler about here. Okay, and give myself about 2 fingers. That's about an inch. And I want to make sure that the outside edge of my paper is parallel with the outside edge of my ruler. And then hold your ruler down really well, and your pencil straight up and down, and trace that. It should be parallel. Then I'm going to do the same thing up here at the top, making sure that my ruler and the edge of the paper are parallel. And I'm actually going to cross over and make like a little box here, because I'm going to try to use that in my final design. Okay, then I'm going to do this one over here. Again, making sure the edge is parallel with the edge of my ruler. like that, and then doing the bottom so that I can see that the edge of my ruler is parallel with the edge of my paper there, and it's just a little off. There we go. That's better. All right, now we've got some defined area to work within. Now, this letter L here has, this white place is the shape. And if I just hold this kind of next to me so that you can kind of see it off the side and I have the ability to like redraw it on here, it's going to take me a little drawing. And I'm going to have to just think about how I want to fit this in the space. I want my swirl here to start right down here, and I'm going to put a little dot right there just to kind of guide me. Then I want this swirl here to be about here. So I'm just going to put a little dot there to guide me so you can see my two dots. Then I want the top of this L piece to be about right here. So I'm just going to put a diagonal line there to kind of bring me to where that is. And then this little hook piece right here on the edge is about right here, just to kind of get that. So I've kind of got some anchoring points, some places where I'm going to start my design. All right. Now, to start that, I'm going to take this swirl and I'm going to look at it and say, well, it starts as a circle about that big, and then it swirls from the bottom and comes up almost to the edge, and right about here it starts to branch out into a solid piece. All right, so I'm going to take one line down this way, just like a bubble letter. Take one piece down here, and then I'm going to start here and make like a triangle. I'm going to curve the triangle up and curve the triangle down. And then about here, on this diagonal line here, those two pieces come together. Okay, so I'm going to actually turn this piece down and turn it up like that and shape it out to here. Okay, then I'm going to take this and swirl it around that point like that. Okay, so I've got that bottom piece right here. Okay, then I'm going to make this top piece up here. I'm just going to drop one straight line down from this piece and make that diagonal a little bit bigger. I'm going to drop a straight line down and curve it out like that. Then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to drop a straight line down just like it is in the picture. Oops. And I'm going to drop straight down until here. And then I'm going to put the little curve in like that. And then I'm going to put the curved line in to connect it like that. Okay. Then I'm going to put the little top L here, and it's just a curved triangle. So I'm going to end the triangle about right here. Now I'm going to bring this one down like this up to that point. Then I'm going to bring this same edge, whoops, yeah, and I'm going to extend this one. Sorry, I did that wrong. I was not looking very well. So erase it, and this is why we're making a plan, so that when we come to class, you have a really clear idea of what you want to do. So here's that place I wanted to end at, and I didn't look at this line extending up further. So I'm going to extend it almost up to the border like that, and then I'm going to swoop it down like that, and then this one swoops over like that. Okay, that's a little better. Now over here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this curvy line, I'm going to curve it up from here like that, and then I'm going to swoop this one down so that it comes just like this, and it follows the same curvy pattern like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to curve this in, curve down, and curve it out like that. Now this little swoopy deal right here that I wanted to include is going to come right up here and curl around that way and curl around this way. And then I'm going to erase this line. Now when you pick out your letters, you just need to really look at the shape. And you can see now I've got just like 4 pretty basic shapes. Now I'm going to take on the like little swirl patterns here. I'm going to do one little line here and another little line here that are these parts. Then I'm going to swirl this loop over here and bring it to touch those right past here and bring it into this part here. Okay. Now that's going to be my L. All right, and I could adjust that. I could make things bigger. I could erase things. But this is what I expect you to come to class with. Some kind of letter, whether it's one of your English letters or it's something else that you've chosen from the packet or something else you found at home. And you've got some nice spaces, but you also have the lines kind of flowing. I've got this repetition of line here. I've kind of got this repetition of the swirls going, and I could put more of that in. But so I really do want you to think of, most importantly, the shapes, because you're going to end up having to fill those shapes in. Okay? Secondly, you're going to think of your balance. Is mine symmetrical? Definitely not. It's very asymmetrical, right? So I've got it that this part is going to be more heavy and this part is going to be lighter over here because there's these outside spaces. Okay? And then thinking ahead, you know, what kind of repetition am I going to be having in my final example there? Okay? So that final example being this, how am I going to take that repetition of the quilling shapes and add that in? So your homework is to make sure you have a nice letter evenly placed in the center with either asymmetry or symmetrical with a nice border around it. Okay? And that's how you finish the letter for your quilling project.